The fourth survival strategy for caregivers is to find a caregiving buddy. Now, some of my favorite stories come from my support groups and from individuals who come up and talk to me at a conference. And this story comes from a conference in Sacramento, California. And at a break, this little woman called Gertrude, but she says, "You can call me Gert," came up to me. And she was a little tiny wiry thing. She was wearing a beanie that was down to her eyebrows. She had the most gorgeous twinkling blue eyes I think I've ever seen. You could tell that there was a lot of mischief behind those eyes. And she had been caring for her husband who had dementia for 10 years. And she said, "I want to tell you my story." And I said, "I love stories, so please go ahead." She said, "Well, last week we live out on an acreage outside of Sacramento, and we had this horrible windstorm come through, and it blew over this huge pecan tree. And this tree was so big, I realized I wasn't going to be able to get to my chickens because the chicken coop was on the other side of the yard from where this fell. And so I went out to the tool shed and I got out the chainsaw, and I spent the entire day cutting a walkway through this trunk. And my husband, he's got dementia. He's not any help anymore, but he sat there out on the back step all day long watching me. And when I finally got a hole that was big enough in that trunk for me to go through, I just, kind of brushed off the wood chips and the sawdust, and I took the chainsaw back and put it back in the toolbox. And then as I walked up to the house, he looked up at me and he said, "Sure is a lucky thing that I wasn't out there when that tree fell." And I said, oh, sweetheart, if that tree had fallen on you, I would have gone into the house, I would have poured myself a glass of wine, and then I would have called 911. And he said, "Yep, sure is a lucky thing I wasn't out there." Well, Gert has a buddy, Dorothy, who's also taking care of her husband who has dementia. And every night after dinner, after they get their husbands to bed, Dorothy and Gert talk on the telephone, and they share their stories of the day. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they cry, sometimes they do both. But on this night, when Gert told Dorothy about the tree and the wine, Dorothy said, "Well, yeah, I know you." She said, "You would have taken your time drinking that glass of wine, and then you would have gone out and you would have checked on him. And if he was still twitching, you would have gone back into the house and poured yourself another glass." Of course, they laughed, and I will tell you that I don't think for a minute that that's really what Gert would have done. But having the opportunity to be a little bit irreverent and have a little gallows caregiving humor that you can share with another person, it's like therapy. It just relieves so much stress. So I really am an advocate of having one dedicated conversation every day with somebody who will understand and support you. And just a word of caution here. This may not always be family members. You don't want to share your stories or maybe your irreverence with anybody who will judge you, criticize you, or tell you how you should or shouldn't feel. So get involved in a caregiver support group if you can, and at the very, very least, have one person that you can talk to on a regular basis who will understand and support you and let you laugh and cry when you need to.